where I just finished.
Well, hi everybody. We're live, and guess
Okay,
what?
we're live now.
Isaiah has been writing a screenplay for a giant moth movie,
Mhm.
and
What's just a mock on it?
well, a mutant, some kind of moth based monster movie, and he has asked if he can read a little portion of the script he's working on. So yeah, you know what? Wherever you want to start, whatever makes the most sense for the bit that you're going to read, go
Okay,
for it.
cool. All right. So this is my movie Moths. Fade in. A night sky in Florida above the tree line. Scary forest, night. Still and quiet. That's the external setting. Montage of the early morning sky consisting of a cluster of openings of sky as seen through a small patch through the trees. In the sky are several stars. Next, we see a yellow tinged full moon off to the upper left-hand corner of the screen positioned next to a few wisps of fleeting clouds. Finally, we cut to a wall of pine trees that appear to a darkened mass stretching across the frame. Following that, the scene gradually transitions to a pair of parallel railroad tracks running towards the horizon. In the very feeble twilight, we can make out two gantries that held up a series of block signals, an upward shot of a close-up of a block signal. Then we cut to a generic scene of a backyard of a house from the railroad tracks. In the background, noises of crickets, owls, and dogs fills the early night sky ambience. This is the last paragraph.
Go for it.
Cut to a pickup truck driving down a country road in Florida. Coming around a bend in a road, the headlights of a vehicle rumbled down between a large grassy knoll on one side of the road and a thicket of trees on the other. Also breaking the darkness of the night were orange street lamps spaced along the road, their electrical wires attached to their wooden posts, glowing like the silk of a spider web in the night. Next the vehicle turned off onto a hidden driveway tucked away in the roads. Exterior shot inside the vehicle, a gold Chevrolet Suburban. The SUV thudded and bobbed as it made its way down the uneven road, its milky white headlights illuminating the nest of twigs, branches, and brush that surrounded the dirt road. The sounds of the Goodyear tires made popping and cracking sounds as it lumbered across the ground. Okay, so that's the opening, I
Okay.
guess. It's a bit worded kind of awkwardly, but that's like me setting
Yeah.
this this is a late night. This is a late night in Florida, you know. It's like when every movie like, movies like that, they would start off, they would try to set the scene. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's
Yeah.
yeah. It's a
I'll
good
tell you.
intro.
I'll give you a couple of tips because I liked it, and I thought, and it paints a picture, which is very important if you're writing like if you're writing sort of the scene setting bits for a script, or like nothing's really happening, you're just kind of establishing the setting and the atmosphere. You want to paint a picture for anybody who's happening to read it, so they can kind of see in their mind's eye, okay, what might this look like, in a movie. A couple of technical comments that you can do with what you will.
okay.
You do go into past tense, and that's not like, I mean, people write, you can write scripts however you want, but usually scripts are written in present tense. Um, and there is occasionally what seems to me like an excessive amount of detail for a script.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You seem like you're aware of that, and see, and that's the trouble when you're writing a script for something and you're not sure, like you would like to make it someday, but you're not sure if you're ever going to get the chance to actually make it. So while you're writing it, you're like, well, I might as well just put everything in here
Yeah. Yeah.
because I don't know if I'll ever get to make it or not.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like, if you have a creative thought, just put it on paper and let your imagination just run wild. The
Yeah.
edit come later when,
Oh, that was the other thing I was going to say. Like, I mean, if anything I just said makes sense to you, just kind of park it, and finish writing the first draft first. I mean, and don't worry about present tense, past tense, too much detail, whatever. Just get to the end of it, get to the end of a draft, and then you can go back and be like,
Then
okay, now
chisel,
what can I fix? Yeah, exactly. Chisel
then
away. Yeah.
chisel away at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking
Exactly.
too about it is since some people they'll never get their movie made. Like a lot of times they write the script as if they're making the movie in their mind, like
Yeah.
as if they're like the producer in their mind, and they're just making a movie based on their imagination. So they're trying to put themselves in their own movie.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
like because the bit about like the orange streetlights and looking like spider webs and so like that's a really nice detail, and again, like it pops in your mind. You can see, you feel like you can see that, but that's in an actual movie. That's typically the sort of thing that you would leave to like a director, in terms of like the visual style of it. But if you make the movie and it turns out you're going to direct it yourself, then who gives a shit? Or if you're working with a really collaborative director who wants your input as the writer into, well, what do you think this would look like and blah blah blah, like then it really, a lot of it depends on if it ever gets to the point where it's going to be produced, who's producing it, and what your relationship as the writer is going to be with those people, and what your role, if any, will be in the actual production of the movie. Because like some of my thoughts and comments are based on the concept of, well, if you're just writing a script just to submit it someplace, you would want to change some things about what you just read to us. But if you're going to try to do it independently, and you meet somebody who wants to be a director and they want to direct it for you, or you decide you can direct it yourself, and you make connections with other people who can be involved in it, and it's
If I could,
then it doesn't matter.
Directed by Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah. And also, like, if you read, it depends on the screenwriter too, because there are certain screenwriters, and these are all like very well established writers now who don't really need to worry about whether or not they're going to sell a script. I mean, they don't sell every script they ever write. Nobody does, but they're well established enough that they don't need to worry about, where their next paycheck is coming from. Like if you read a script by, Aaron Sorkin, it's going to read a lot differently than a script by some up and coming screenwriter you've never heard of who's trying to sell a script. The more famous you get, the more well established you get, the more well known your name is, the more you can afford to put your own idiosyncrasies into the script, and people will be tolerant of it. They won't be like, oh Jesus, who does this guy think he is writing a script like this? They'll know who you are. They'll know what to
once
expect.
once you've got that screw off money, you can just
Exactly
do what you want.
Exactly. Well, it's like, I think we talked in a previous one of these, we talked about like comic book scripts. If you read like a script by Alan Moore, they're ridiculously detailed. And most comic book scripts don't read like Alan Moore scripts. They don't have nearly that level of detail. That's not the standard way it's done. But Alan Moore is Alan Moore. And at this point, he can write a script whatever he wants. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the details that sort of jump out at me that are very literary. So if I were writing in a novel or a short story, that would be great. But I think as a script might not fit. Like you talk about specific make of tires and vehicles. Normally you would say an American car of this era, right? Because you want to give the director and whoever's working on it a little space for them to, to be able to interpret that and say, well, we can't get this specific model of 1947 Chevy truck because we don't have it, but we can get a 1952 version, right? And unless you're a car crazy, and go like, no, I read the original script, it has to be 1947. They're not going to know.
Yeah. So you would say like mid-century.
Right.
Yeah.
People have said that it does sound like a novel as opposed to a script, but you can easily just like remove some of the stuff from the script and just write the movie so
yeah.
That goes to it's not a problem for me because I'm listening and I'm in the moment with you, right? But I'm like Steve is saying, if you do sell it or you work with somebody, there's technical issues that they have to deal with, and they're like, yeah, I love to have that very specific Goodyear tire, for example, would jump out at me. As a writer, I'm like, wow, Goodyear, yes, I can hear the tire going through the backcountry road, because I've lived in backcountry roads as well. But
so,
You
Same
can
make
also
and
write
model, the same make and model tar.
yeah,
well, so
you can also write the screenplay and the novel concurrently.
yeah.
So-
There you go.
So-
The novelization. Yeah.
Isaiah?
Go ahead, Isaiah.
I was saying, so the scene that was coming up is the movie centers around these two anti-government people, these two anti-government white folks who live in the backwoods of Florida in 1992 or the early 90s, are like conspiring to like attack the federal government, by derailing a train. Because what they're doing is they're angry about this like standoff with this guy up in Montana. It's loosely based off of Ruby Ridge, but and Ruby Ridge does get mentioned like a bit in the script, analogous to what this guy up north is doing. His name is I want to say Matthew Randolph or something. That's the guy's name. That's like that has a standoff with the FBI or something. So
That's a perfect name for like a guy holding a right wing standoff with the FBI.
Wait, wasn't he the Olympic bomber?
No,
that was Eric Rudolph.
Eric Rudolph.
Maybe they're related. It's turned into
they probably grew up across the street from each other.
So what I was saying was, so these two like anti-government people, they sabotage a train track, a train track, yeah. So there's this freight train that's taking chemical weapons to be dismantled because it's after the Cold War, so stuff like that's being dismantled. The train hits the kink in the track, derails, spills its toxic waste. Some moths look at it and they suck on it, and that's how they mutate. So
and there you go.
Yeah.
That's where the scene was going, and that I was reading.
No, and I would say, I might sound that I'm being negative. No, I was in the moment, so it really worked. So I want to stress the positive as well, right? And honestly, the toughest part about writing scripts, especially when you're first starting out and you haven't done it very much, is it can be really difficult to find the balance between how much detail to include and how much to leave out. The rule of thumb is you should only get really detailed in a script if the detail is important to the story. But even that is a judgment call. Even that can go either way sometimes.
I'm going back with Steve and what he said on finish it first. Ultimately, at this point, with the draft not done, the person you're writing for is the you that is continuing the draft. You need to write it for yourself, so that you need as much detail as you need in order to keep going with the draft. Get it done, then get it good.
There you go.
Excise it all out of your mind.
You don't want
to get the poison out, as Jason would say.
There's a fun quote about that. Like me, who's been stuck at an outline for like over a decade.
That the primary purpose for writing is to get the poison out.
Yeah, that's it. I can't count how many times Jason has said that on the movie podcast. Is just you have to get the poison out. You have to get the poison out.
Carol, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was going to say, and it's about 10-15 minutes ago. I've written things and gone back to them, and I've read it and I thought, blimey, this is good. Are you sure I wrote this? Was I not on some kind of ethereal plane writing this? And I mean, I know exactly what you mean when you say getting the poison out, but it's also this. One of the reasons that I'm writing the book I'm writing at the moment is because I've read such dire versions of it that are published and you can buy. And I thought, I can do better than this. Hells, I can write better than this. And I write fan fiction. So you can all go take a running jump.
Well, and to prove what you're saying is that J.J. Abrams has ever had a job.
Hey now, come on.
No.
He's a good marketer.
I'm not saying all of his work is great.
With Star Trek. This is nothing to do with Star Trek, and Steve knows this.
I'm not going to defend everything the man's ever done. But he.
Well, see, I actually know somebody who's actually worked with them,
J.J. Abrams can write a great first act.
He may, and that's, and I mean, he may personally, he may be a dick. I have no idea, but just go. I defend some of his body of work, and I defend his general. Like, a lot of people just automatically don't like anything he does, and
I will say the following.
Yeah,
I will say the following. He's the best. He's the best second unit director in all Hollywood.
I was saying before, he can write a great first act.
Just like how
apparently can't finish a story, but he can.
Yes, that's true.
I will say this. I'll say this about J.J. Abrams, and it's not necessarily his fault directly, but he is probably, if you can hang this on one single person, he's probably the single filmmaker most responsible for popularizing the mystery box form of storytelling.
I have my hands on that.
Yeah, and that really needs to go away. Like, that really needs to go away.
I'm not familiar with
the last. I was also going to say,
I'm not familiar with that term. Could you?
The mystery. Okay, so think of like a Cloverfield, how it's the word, the marketing behind Cloverfield is the word too, where it's just like
Lost.
Or Lost.
Yeah,
that's a good one. It's a mystery. The point is to have a mystery there. Never tell the audience what it is, and that did left people like speculating. Like, wait a minute, is this thing about Cloverfield related to like Voltron? And people seriously think that was the case. Another thing, like how Cloverfield Lane, that movie was starring John Goodman in the cellar or something like that. That's a great movie. Has nothing to do with Cloverfield whatsoever.
Well, and also it's not just the. I mean, it's not just the marketing. The marketing is part of it, but it's also structuring a story so that there's a big payoff near the end of the story, whether it's a movie or a season of TV or whatever. There's like a big payoff near the end that everything kind of hangs on. And if the audience doesn't buy the one big payoff, the whole thing kind of blows up.
Like the Mandalorian.
Oh, well, like the after, I would say the Mandalorian after the first season. I think the first season of Mandalorian, I thought pulled it off pretty well. But yeah, like a lot of streaming shows, like for whatever reason, that storytelling model became really popular with streaming shows, and there are a lot of streaming shows that try, and very few have pulled it off.
And a good example of a failed mystery box is Lost.
Yeah,
Lost is a terrible mystery box version. And I mean, like I said, the book I'm working on has the two main characters who suffer from, I can't really do anything too horrible to them because they've got loads of plus armor. And the audience, the readers, don't expect them to have anything too horrible. I can add a lot of angst in and a general amount of suffering. But at the end, they've got to get back together, and they've got to swan off into the sunset happily.
What do you call it? Have you my favorite example of a character that, because he is the center of the series, has a great amount of plot armor, but the author just torturing him constantly is the Harry Dresden books and the.
Oh God, yeah.
I knew you were going there. I'm like, you're gonna say Dresden.
I'm laughing because I play this game Hackmaster. It's basically kind of like first and second edition D&D, and there's the characters. Actually, we're playing tomorrow. Characters are going through this circumstance, and there's somebody with them, kind of keeping an eye on what they're doing, and kind of accounting for everything and making sure that they fulfill the what they're trying to do. And whenever trouble comes, he's never around. And they're like, well, how come, he didn't get killed, or how come he didn't get fired? How come he's not helping us? And I'm like, plot armor. He's wearing layers and layers upon plot armor.
I mean, there are it's ideally if you're writing something, best case scenario, you can avoid that. But there are times when, why does this happen? Well, because if it doesn't happen, the rest of the story doesn't happen, and that's not necessarily a fatal flaw. Like, a lot of stories have that, especially if it's a series or it's like, well, what was it?
He has to take the red pill or else the movie doesn't happen.
I made fun. I made in my last Star Trek episode review about It's Only a Paper Moon. I made a joke about how, the story wouldn't have happened if Nog had just had earphones.
Yeah,
and he could have just listened to his song in private, and he wouldn't have had to go to the holosuite to avoid bothering Jake. But that's I'm totally kidding. Like, I don't think the story would have been better if Nog had earphones. Like, then it's completely fine that the story happened the way it did. I'm just, you know, like
when you first said so that the story can happen, I'm sure you've seen Ryan George.
Oh yeah, God, he's hilarious. The pitch meetings,
meeting where it's like, so why do they do that? Yeah, something wacky, so back to the story can happen.
Because the movie has to happen.
Yeah, like a story where everything goes right. Everyone always makes the most logical, correct sound decisions, and things just go so smooth. Such a boring story.
Well, I have a solution for that.
I'm tired of swooning females. I mean, even in my, as I said, in my fan fiction one, I'm tired of people getting access to some deep dark secret and suddenly, oh my God, I can't cope, I've got to run for the hills. Oh, for the crying out loud. I mean, okay, they might be a bit shocked and taken aback, but it's not going to be this, oh, save me, Isambard, hey, help me while I faint in your arms. Oh, for the love of sorry, you can tell it infuriates
well, I mean,
me, can't you?
I think
that's
again,
a Lovecraftian thing I've sometimes wondered about. A lot of those kinds of stories, someone will find out about Cthulhu or the Elder Gods and realize we're just insignificant bacteria, and the realization, it just causes somebody to go completely insane. I would sometimes wonder, would somebody actually react that way?
Yeah, because
that's like the popular
if you look at pictures from Voyager, and where they've turned it around and it points back at the Earth, and they actually show you where Earth is, and you can see that we're this tiny insignificant little dot.
The little blue,
no
the pale
one
blue
I
dot.
know no one I know who's seen that has suddenly gone racing out into the street with their arms above their head, pulling their hair out, going, "Oh my God, we're
all of this is pointless. What are we doing?"
That's also stories were written at a time when
that's also the postmodernist mindset.
Existential dread.
That's also that's the way the postmodernist paradigm works. Was it that nothing matters because we are small specks, but the postmodernist mindset is we choose to give things meaning by our choices, and it is our choice that gives them meaning. And so the fact that we don't have some external sort of ultimate meaning, we've sort of at this point in our culture made peace with that. So I really think the Cthulhuid, oh no, it's really H.P. Lovecraft was a product of the greater cultural mindset at the time, which was modernism into postmodernism.
Yeah. Well,
I choose to take my more existential dread as far as recognizing that we are just a speck in the universe by just recognizing that I still got to make it through this shit.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You can look at it. You can look at it from
Cthulhu mashup.
You can look at it from
Dr. Seuss Cthulhu mashup. It's hilarious, but it's also they go together. Dr. Seuss's pictures and the way he rhymes and Cthulhu go together really, really creepily well.
Well, the things that gets me about the whole existential thing, it's like I don't really get too involved with the whole atheist religious content anymore. Occasionally I do when there's always like, well, how do you explain like you have to explain the origins of the universe? I'm like, no, I don't.
I don't have to explain a goddamn thing.
One thing that's interesting to me is
I've reached a point where I don't even care where the universe came from. Like you said, we have to cope with the universe we're in, regardless of why it's here.
Right.
Sure. I had a very good teacher when I was at university. He said the thing is, we have a very hard time thinking in time. And so I want you to think of a truck, one of those trucks that has articulated containers on the back. He said, think of a truck with 4 of these on, then double it. You can think of 4, then double it again. You can think of 8, double it again. You can maybe think of 16 articulated trucks, double it again and again and again and again, until eventually you get to a point where you can see the truck at the front, but you can't see all the containers because your mind can't hold that many containers. And he said, that's how you should think of time and evolution. It's not 4, sort of containers. It's something like 400 million billion, all behind one vehicle. And we can't think of time like that because the human brain can't think of time like that. And once you understand that, you can just kind of go, oh, fine, great. So it is evolution. And he just gave me a really filthy look and said, why the hell do you think I left the church?
Well,
and all these questions come back to like people's question of control over situations, right? So one of the things, one of my earliest mentors, he was a mentor for many, many years, actually, through my early career, told me, and it was just in terms of like whenever a mistake is made or a problem arises or something like that, is he said, and God, my girlfriend's downstairs, she's going to hear me and know I'm a high anxiety person and recognize you don't actually live by this, but that, you know, that problems don't always have solutions, but situations always have outcomes.
Right.
So, and that allows me when I get into those situations to be like, okay, let's, as you were saying, kind of put these things into buckets and then attack it as we go.
That's how engineers fix things.
Yeah.
Well, and even thinking about like the vastness of the universe, you think about the pale blue dot, right? It's like, wow, it's so vast. We're this little tiny dot. Think about it. In universal time, hell, even on the galactic scale, that distance is almost nothing. So we're a tiny speck from a very short distance away. And so conceiving that, then realize that, even on a galactic scale, you can't even conceive of how much bigger the galaxy is, let alone the universe. That it's even, the galaxy is a tiny speck in the universe. It's not barely even a speck.
I would just like to share that we're discussing this on this stream, where on prior streams, we have discussed politics, we have discussed Batman, we have discussed Star Trek, we have discussed fucking Scooby-Doo.
Yes, yes, we
I'm
have.
desperately trying not to talk over or interrupt anybody.
Sure, go ahead, Nick.
Go for it, Nick.
One view of the universe that, I mean, okay. So about Schrodinger's experiment, his cat. Is the question of like, does the light exist anymore when the refrigerator door is shut? Like, is there a universe if we can't observe it? And it's this kind of like conceited human view, admittedly, that, well, look at all these species that are just kind of eating and sleeping and just trying to get through the day. Hey, isn't that kind of relatable? But it's like, is there any value to the universe if there isn't a sapient, intelligent species like us that can appreciate its beauty, that can like understand how big it is and admire that? It's like, there's or are we just like the universe observing itself somehow? It's I guess in a really weird territory.
Well, here's the thing I want to say.
To Nick's point, I just want to bring up the Fermi paradox and how egocentric the Fermi paradox is. It's like, well, if there's intelligent, life out there, of course they would have come across. If they existed, they would have. Of course, they would have come here by now. So they must not be there because they didn't come.
Well, the grim thing about the Fermi paradox is, some people have the dark forest interpretation, where everybody out there is out to get everybody else, so they're all keeping quiet, so some other species doesn't come to their planet to wipe them out, because everybody wants to wipe each other. It's the most cynical view possible. Another view is that
is that the philosophy, or is it that they're afraid?
Has anyone ever considered that somebody has come and taken a look at us when we were bumbling around? And
they checked us off the list.
Okay, but the other.
Okay, let Nick finish. Let Nick finish his point. Jesus Christ.
The another possibility is there? Okay, you look at how many creatures are out there that are sentient, which means you sense things literally, but they're not sapient like us, and you wonder, is sapience, like our human intelligence, is that a detriment? Because look at all the selfish things it causes us to do, and how destructive we can be when we're just like let loose. So is that the answer to the Fermi paradox? Did all the aliens just invent capitalism and then consume all the planet's resources and wipe themselves out before they could ever find a planet B? Is that what's going to happen to us? Is that the great filter? That is the ultimate fate of every intelligent species? I don't know.
That is a really interesting theory that sapience is a evolutionary dead end.
Well, the thing is, he assumes that any species that was capable of interplanetary, interstellar travel would be so efficient and just automatically just keep colonizing and get there as fast as possible. I'm like, we don't do that on this planet. What are you talking about? Like, humans don't do that shit.
It's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I was gonna
Oh,
say
God.
something
Oh,
about
it's
all
certainly a lot
this,
closer.
because part of the reason of that reasoning, I would put it in the people. I would say something generally, and you can not try to counter this. I think everybody has some form of faith, and that is they believe in something.
At least a dogma or
They,
something like that.
that cannot they cannot prove, but they believe in it.
Yeah.
And I think that you can put it in two general categories. You have the knowing faith and the questing faith. And the knowing faith is usually conservative in that what they want is that they want to know. They're not searching for the correct answer. They're asking for an answer that serves them in a way that, like, I know this. Like, people, one thing that annoys me, people is like, the good book says, is like, stop, just stop, because they're saying they already have the answer to this. It doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. And then you have the questing faith, people who know that there's always another question, and they welcome that, right? And I feel that that's general progressive. So to the view of, you know, how immense the universe is, the knowing faith will say, oh, it's already written, it's 60,000 years or whatever old, I already have the answers, don't worry about it. But the questing faith will go like, there's another point out there I can imagine or go to. I want to go there. I want to go to the moon, and I want to go to the
One
Mars.
is provisional, is provisional, the other is prescriptive. I don't know.
And in many ways, that's how you see. To this day, we talk about, you know, Dan was talking about modernism, postmodernism, but we're still fighting in that clash of people who eventually are saying, no, I have the answer. Like when they talk about gender, when they talk about all kinds of things, I have the answer, and it has to be that answer, because if this is wrong, or more importantly, it's not acceptable, then I actually don't know anything, and that's terrifying. That is the Cthulhu fear, that you really don't know, that you think you know things, you're so sure of them. And then somebody comes along and is like, yeah, you're wrong. And they're forced to confront that. And now their universe collapses, whether it's an elder god or some guy going like, yeah, you know, just pinch yourself with a vaccine and you'll be fine. Don't worry.
I do think that's a dividing line between people to a certain extent, in terms of like how you view the world and how you know, sort of carry on in your life. There are people who are just not able to get on with it unless they feel like they can have a particular level of certainty about things. And then there are people who admit that, you know, like philosophically speaking, certainty doesn't really exist, not to a fullness of certainty, not to the point where like you couldn't possibly be wrong about this. And that's just the way it is. And you just have to do the best you can. You know, it reminds me of Serious Mind reminded me of this too when he was saying his piece a little bit ago. When those of us who were active in the atheist spaces went through this little fad where we were arguing with presuppositionalists. And I had a couple of those debates where I would argue with a presuppositional apologist, and they're ultimately pointless because you're not going to change anybody's mind about anything. And they really have nothing that's worth intellectually taking seriously to begin with, but it comes from that it comes from that concept of like the argument is pointless, because I would say they would say, well, how do you know your reasoning is sound? How can you be certain that your reasoning is sound? And I would say, I can't. and they would say, well, but then how do you know you're right? Or I don't. I mean, not at that level, not at that level of like philosophical certainty. I don't. How do you know the chair you're sitting in is really there? I guess I don't. I'm a
little bit of a step back from there, where like I will say, that's why I call myself agnostic, because I say I don't know for certain that there's no God. But if I had to bet, if somebody was putting a gun in my hand to make me choose, I'm going to say there's no God. But otherwise, I don't really know.
Oh, you don't. You don't know.
Yeah. Well, I would question what we mean by God. If you have a creative being that's incredibly powerful, does that inherently mean that we are obligated to worship it?
Sure. Well, also too, as far as the presuppers go, is it like what Steve was just saying, is that they would take that as a victory. They're like, well, I can be certain. I'm like, well, how? And then they'll point to whatever, and I'm like, okay. I went through this with both Sven and Fang X and also Saitan Brug and Kate.
Yeah.
And I got both of them to admit, I said, okay, you recognize that, just say a Muslim fundamentalist feels the same level of certitude that you do, and they would say yes. I'm like, all right, so that means feeling certitude is obviously not a clear indication of certitude, because you're saying right here, someone who thinks they're just as certain as you, but they're not according to you. So why should I believe you more than them? And they never had an answer for me. I actually got Sci-10 off a script 3 times.
Growing up in a Muslim country, I had that exactly from friends at my boarding school who were Christian, and people I knew back in the Middle East who were Muslim. And my Christian friends, how do your Muslim friends know they're right? And I got to my team and said, well, how do you as Christians know you're right?
Yeah.
You can't
armor-piercing question.
say, you can't say don't talk to me about it. Like I said, I just watched a program called Praying for Armageddon, and I swear it's frightening. I think I told Steve about it. These people who honestly thwart the peace process in Israel because they believe it'll bring Jesus back.
That's why they're funding.
Utterly terrifying.
Well, and you think about the arrogance of that, because it's one thing to say, okay, the book, the holy book, we believe predicts that if certain things happen, then Jesus comes back. It's another to think that, well, if we create those circumstances, that will make Jesus have to come back. I'm like, wow, that's beyond. That's a level.
Yeah, like and aren't they? Doesn't Jesus even say in the Bible, "Just chill out; it'll happen when it happens"? Basically, like
he speaks of his father, that only his father knows.
If I brought this
the time,
people misinterpret things like John, where Peter turns to Jesus and says, and he gestures to, we think it's John, we think it's the man who wrote the gospel, but we don't know because when he's not named. And he says, well, what's going to happen to him? And Jesus says, well, if he has to stay around till I come back, that's my business. He's not saying he's going to live forever. What he's saying is, concentrate on what I've told you to do, and what happens to him is his story. As C.S. Lewis says in the Narnia books, no one's told any story but their own. In other words, Peter, stop worrying about everybody else and do what I bloody well told you to do.
that little word is so important. That word if. Oh, that word if.
So something I wanted to note. It's important to keep in mind, like unfortunately, a lot of our leaders right now, they either believe in the end times prophecy or they're pandering to a base that does, basically giving them what they want. And it's a gross misinterpretation. Things like the whole modern idea of the rapture, of people being whisked away and the heathens being left behind. That's a modern interpretation. From my understanding, one of many older interpretations is that the rapture would be this moment of awakening, spiritual ascension. Like everybody around the world would just suddenly know in their mind's eye that, oh my God, God is real, and they wouldn't be able to deny it anymore. That's one interpretation of the rapture.
They wouldn't be denying their truth, the one that they're establishing. That's the thing.
Has anyone ever read Terry Pratchett?
Wait, Nick, are you saying that the rapture is when everybody goes woke?
Did they have the scales taken from their eyes?
Interpretation of the rapture.
Had to do it.
So look, the my interpretation of the rapture. The thing is, these people who pretend to care so much about Jewish people because they'll defend Israel to the end of it, to their dying breath. They want Israel to be destroyed in the end times prophecy, essentially, so that the Christians can go up to heaven and look down and point and laugh at everybody who didn't make it, including all the Jewish people who didn't convert to Christianity at the last second.
They love Israel and hate Jews.
Yeah.
And don't have an idea
of the end times prophecy, as they weaponize it, is one of the most anti-Semitic myths in history.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I said,
they get so offended when you call them
failed.
fascists.
Yeah, I'm old enough to have done O levels. For anyone who knows what an O level is, as opposed to the new system. Well, I was slated to get an A. Done really well. My tutor got a heart attack, and the substitute teacher that came in handed out a copy to every student called The Late Great Planet Earth, and we studied that for 6 weeks. We studied this rapture theology. I came out of my O level exam with a D- because of her, because we didn't do the syllabus. And it's the closest I've come. And I can remember standing in the headmaster's office and saying, you failed as you didn't get us the cup because you were put forward for a theology prize. if you didn't get the cup. And it's the first time I actually shouted back at the headmaster and said, "It's a bloody teacher's fault. Oh no, you're a young girl. Young girls don't say that." I said, "Well, she taught us this book, and I'd held on to it. I didn't give it back. She taught us this book. It's not the syllabus. We're not supposed to be learning about some stupid rapture talked about by some nutcase who wrote about the emperor's assault on the fortress of Armageddon, which is a fortress of Megiddo in somewhere in Turkey." And I'm kind of getting quite incensed, and my parents kind of, there's my mum going, Cara, calm down. He's not angry with you. I said, "Well, I'm angry with me. It should have been stopped. She should have been vetted."
Yeah.
Steve, I have an idea. I have an idea for you. You know, I know you're doing your clips where you're telling the truth to the conservatives, as telling them what it is. Well, when you get to go back to the the Dominionists, your character comes with a bottle of like absinthe and says, "You know what? I finally read your book. I needed this bottle to do it, but I read your goddamn book, and it's the craziest thing I've ever read."
How much of this did you guys drink when you wrote this?
Well, one thing about that certitude on the right wing, I've run into, because the same people that that would go into free suppers and those types, also they're against environmental laws and regulations, welfare. And on more than one occasion, I've challenged one of these people that said that, we don't need clean air laws and clean water laws. My water's clean enough. I said, okay, well, I'm a chemical engineer. I'll mix up a cocktail, and there's 2 glasses of water. One's going to have deadly shit in it that'll kill you within hours. Other one will be pure, unadulterated water. If you're so certain that you can tell the difference, I'll put those up there, and then you drink the one that's right. And they all get like this frightful look on their face. And I'm like, oh, suddenly you're not so certain anymore.
Interesting.
They never take me up on it.
Yeah, because the problem is not that they don't think their water it's their water is clean. My stuff, my shit doesn't smell, but that guy over there does. But that's not my problem, and I do not want to pay taxes.
And
you just look at and look at how
they're not recognizing the fact that their taxes, their water revenue bills, that's what has paid over the years for the water treatment plant.
Yes. Right. Well, and look to the point. I mean, I'm going to say, look at how conservatives react, but I mean, everybody is capable of reacting this way. It's just that a lot of conservatives seem to more prone to craft policy based on this reaction. Look at how they react when they interpret something as being directly their problem versus somebody else's problem. If it's somebody else's problem, we don't need to do anything about that. But the moment they think it's their problem, oh my God, how can we stand for this? We have to do something. And all of their small government principles go out the window when it's about fixing something that they think affects them. Then it's like, oh, all hands on deck. We got to do something about this shit.
Which is generally about them having to be polite to somebody who might be a little different than them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That, like, it's not even a problem.
The number of male politicians who will say something like, now that I've had a daughter, like,
oh yeah,
once it directly affects or even indirectly, but like, one step away from you, and now you can see it. It shouldn't take that. Other people who are not related to you still matter.
But you're right. CMAC makes
or they should.
Yeah, CMAC makes a good point that like a lot of conservatives will pass a law making it officially legal for them to dead name trans people before they pass any kind of Clean Water Act. You know what I mean? It's like, I want the You're Allowed to Say the N-Word Act will pass Congress if it's Republican controlled before any kind of environmental policy that could actually help somebody.
This is all they have. They have nothing to offer their constituents, nothing that'll make anyone's life materially better, nothing that'll keep the lights on, keep their house warm at night, feed their kids. So they're like, you know what? We'll give you hate. We'll make sure that we fuck over those people over there a little worse than we fuck you over.
Stop calling me out like this, damn it.
And especially when they get into the whole free speech thing, they want to be able to say the N-word. But they're like, people shouldn't be so sensitive. But you do anything that remotely criticizes, their particular form of Christianity or their politics, all of a sudden they shouldn't be allowed to say that.
Oh yeah, cancel. I'm being canceled.
They shouldn't be allowed to say things that make me uncomfortable. But
How
I do believe in free
wish they were
speech.
being canceled.
That's what I call the weak God argument, basically.
I
Which
believe
is,
in
if
free
you're
speech.
God,
From the river to the sea is terrorism.
Yeah, but I believe in free
Well, I
speech.
guess I'm a terrorist then.
I believe in free speech.
I am a terrorist. I'm an anarchist. So.
It's like it's free. Remember, it's not just freedom for the thought you love. It's freedom for the thought you hate the most. Except when you say anything that makes me the slightest bit uncomfortable.
Although one thing I will point out about the river to the sea thing is that both the Palestinians and the Likud party have used that slogan.
Yeah, I know.
So that's why I won't use it, because I'm like, no.
Yeah, that's the same reason I steer clear of it completely. I'm like, I'm just not going to say that because it's like
no pun intended, but it muddies the waters.
I hate it's one of the rare points where I will actually say, you know what, it's just complicated.
Yeah, and it's not
because
just...
because there's a lot of that situation where like it is definitely possible that there are a lot of things about the Palestinian Israel conflict that people say is complicated that isn't nearly as complicated as they say it is, but and they use that to kind of hide behind it and just to justify, well, let's just not do anything. It's complicated, but there are certain, for me personally, like the river to the sea thing is a very small example of that, where I'm like, there seems like there's a lot of baggage on both sides to this thing, and I'm just not going to say that.
Which is similar to like when we were talking actively in this country in 2020 about reforming the police system, and you had the phrases, the ACAB obviously, but then you also had defund the police going around, which everybody on our side kind of got what that meant,
right?
But was used by the other side, and I'm just like, I'm beating the table, guys. This is bad branding.
Even I didn't get it at first,
and people couldn't, but people didn't want to hear it, and they kept.
But
going.
honestly, it makes perfect sense. Like,
right,
when you
but
factor
the right
but
up with it.
I think that it should have been more like, if you were smart, and I know why people said that, because they were angry and they were reacting like, we're tired of this crap, so we gotta go strong, or go home. But it should be really retasking the police. Actually, literally go to the cops, go like, you want to do another domestic? Because the cops hate domestic calls. Like, you still want to do that, or you want some psychologist to take care of that? Maybe they call you once in every 5 blue moons to do that.
Yeah.
Like, you make that argument to the cops.
It's kind of analogous to 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when if you said Obamacare, a bunch of people were against it, but if you went through the individual policies that they wanted to enact, people loved it.
Still the case.
And if you said defund the police, people would be like, oh my God, no, don't, back the blue. But if you said, well, what if we take responsibilities off the plate of the police department and hand them to agencies,
so much of them.
Yeah. And pass the responsibility over to agencies that are better equipped to deal with that,
The problem is that doesn't make an easy slogan,
No, it doesn't. That's the problem.
Well, and this is the problem for the left in general, whether you're barely to the left or all the way to the left, is that because it tends to involve more thought. It doesn't appeal to the lizard brain. You can't use a lizard brain slogan.
The left has to do all the work.
I disagree on that. You can, if you think about it for a little while instead of just going with what what gets the most traction first, you can come up with a better slogan. So instead of talking about defund the police, but refocus the police, or support police officers.
Yeah, that doesn't have the snap.
Support police officers.
And it's not refocus the police. Ironically enough, refocus the police is too vague.
Right. I think Dana.
I'm coming up with this on 5
Yeah, I understand.
5 seconds.
I mean, that's the
thing.
Like unburden the
police.
Yeah, unburden the police. That's a good one.
I've always heard people
You've
on our
no
side.
chance. She's only had 6 hours sleep.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
Yeah.
We've always said, I've always heard people say, oh, well, there's better slogans. I'm like, well, what are they? And yeah, it is not so easy, because again, the reason why right-wing stuff, it's still, the reason why anybody listens to it, because it hits the lizard brain. It hit, it's very, even when it's patently false, it's intuitive.
Yeah.
And that's
emotionally resonant. Yeah.
So that's just
one thing I gotta say. Sorry. So you look at the rest of the world, And then you look at how America is basically a rogue nation now, and in our
always has been.
Just recently, just recently.
But go ahead, continue, Nick.
Go ahead, Nick.
But on this specific, I'm just focusing on this specific issue and how it's really just undeniable now. Okay, what was I gonna say? Never mind, I forgot.
America was a rogue nation.
Israel is a rogue nation too.
Oh, now I remember.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yes.
I just don't see how this ends well, because let's go like a worst case scenario. If someone really does care about Israel and wants to keep it safe, do they think this is the way to do it? Like, what do they think is going to happen if Israel succeeds and the last Palestinian person dies, the last Muslim, the last Arab? Do they think the rest of the world is just going to let that slide? No, it's going to make the world hate them even more, and by extension, hate Jewish people.
Well, I think the worst thing that can happen to Israel, because of the history of the state of Israel from 1948 to today, would be peace. Because one of the identifiers of the modern state of Israel is the narrative that they're always under attack.
Right.
So if you don't have an internal or external enemy, then Netanyahu is doing this because he's one step away from going to prison.
Right.
We had a former Israeli president who was accused and went to prison for rape. Sharon was called the settlement king because he funneled all the money of settlements to his sons and himself, and he was involved in the massacre in Lebanon as well, right? If you remove that external threat idea of, we have to defend ourselves, then the politics of Israel would eat itself, because Israel has never gone through that process of, essentially civil war, right? Going that process where we actually define what Israel is for Israelis, which all states have to go through at some point. What is the nation state for us, the Israelis? And when that happens, there's no room for error because people are so polarized within Israel.
But what would the other Arab countries do if Israel did succeed in either forcing out or killing all the Palestinians? That's
nothing.
Nothing.
Because here's the thing. To go with,
I don't know.
No, I know they will do nothing, and here's the reason why. For the same reason, I'm sorry, lessons learned. I don't know what your first name is.
Raphael.
Raphael. So the thing about it is,
like the turtle.
You talked about it a second ago, that the myth that Israel is constantly under attack and there's these Arab hordes just 2 seconds away from invading. Those armies have either been defeated or crumbled. They don't exist anymore. That's the biggest problem.
Or they're allies of Israel, actually.
That's right.
Jordan and
allies.
Egypt.
That's right. Or they're allies.
Yeah.
So this is the problem, that the people that basically will give Israel carte blanche is they still in this mindset, this Maginot line set of the past war, the 2, 3, 4, 5 wars ago, and they're like, but that's the thing, is that if Israel, and that's why actually they're getting away with what they're doing right now, because other than launching a few missiles here and there, rockets, there's really not much they can do. So that's why I say, so if they do wipe out the Palestinians, nothing's going to happen to them, and which is not a good thing. I'm not on board with that.
I do think it's two questions.
And it's like I told a friend who was struggling with trying to understand the Palestinian side, and so I started off actually. You'll see what I did. So I said, well, look, no one can accept, because he was talking about, well, Israel's got to defend itself. I said, well, no one can accept someone raining terror and death from above on them. And then I leaned in. I said, no one can accept people raining death and terror on them from above. No one. And then it hit them, like what I was saying, like, okay, yeah, you can see, Israel can say, okay, they killed our people. That's not good. We have to do something. But okay, but yeah, that was 1,500 people versus 45,000 people.
I mean, it's one of those things where I've been leaning more and more to the left because of analysis of systems and what to keep, what to throw away, what to destroy. And the reason for it is that, for example, I look at this like there are things that have simple solutions, relatively speaking, like immigration. Yeah, stop messing with other countries' people's economies and stop doing the drug war. You want to end the drug? You want to win the drug war? End it. It hasn't worked in 80 years, right? Yeah. You want to fix the Israeli
or it worked exactly as intended.
Well, true, but this is what I talk about systemic problems, right? I'm talking about
war would be to actually legalize the minor drugs, and then if you've got to look at the harder drugs to control them better, you spend about 300 trillion per year on the drug war. it hasn't succeeded yet. It
But we
hasn't
have
succeeded.
Yeah,
It hasn't
why-
succeeded
All right,
now,
all right, let him,
Patrick,
let him.
we have places.
Let him finish his point. The show's almost over. Let him finish.
Yeah,
his
sorry.
point.
We have places where it had worked, like Portugal, where they have done the work. Right. You want to end the
Yeah.
problem with the Palestinians, end the occupation. But the problem is that the current systems that we have are built around those things: to have the occupation, to have the drug war, to have the exploitation of other countries. And so you want to fix the apparent problems of the system. At some point, you have to decide what to keep, what to change, and literally what to blow up.
Well, and this
And
is the
another
reason why the
misconception
worst
among the
day of
West
this, the worst
that
day of the
is-
second half of the 20th century was the murder of Itzhak Rabin.
Mm-hmm.
To me, like Biden's most
Wait,
shameful
wait.
moment was what he said about the Palestinians, basically using race realism or race science to make it sound like there was something uniquely bad about them, that they're just predisposed from thousands of years of genes to hate you. I hated him so much.
What other reason could there be for Palestinians being pissed at Israel?
Like, I don't know how
there's
many
no
times
other
I-
possible
I don't know how much
explanation.
more simply I can explain it to people. Your entire family being blown up will radicalize you. That's just how humans work.
Yeah, you're not. I mean, maybe you're hurting Hamas in the short term, but you're not hurting Hamas or organizations like that in the long run. You're just giving them more shit to recruit for. I mean, it's
And one of the
And then there's a whole
misconceptions in the
TikTok
West
thing.
that's just I think is so damaging to the Mideast policy, and not just policy, but our perceptions in Western Europe and in Western Hemisphere, that other Arab nations are not necessarily friends of the Palestinians.
Mm-hmm.
Like
not
Arabs
monoliths,
are. I mean, people on this stream not recognize it. The Arabs are not a homogeneous block.
Nope.
right.
They're very, very different from one another. And so when I was saying to Kara earlier, it's two questions. It's because, okay, do they wipe out the Palestinians or do they create a whole bunch of refugees? Because if they create a whole bunch of refugees, then the Arab nations care. If they wipe them out, the Arab nations don't really care.
I mean, we have places like in Lebanon where the refugee camps are so established that they're literally apartment blocks in concrete because these people have been stuck there for decades.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
40% of the population in Jordan is Palestinian.
70%.
Yeah.
One last thing I got to note.
The fact you have different sects of Islam. You have Sufi Islam, which is the kind of the sect that still believes in the descendants of Muhammad, and you have Sunni Islam, which is the main one.
The Shiite.
The Shiite. And the things, if you ever go, I remember watching, I was about 10, this chap who was supposedly a friend of my father, and I'll be very, very quick because you have to finish. He took us up to a roof and he said, "No, I want you to watch something. It'll be exciting." And we watched all these young men stripped to the waist, thrash themselves with chains and whips and all kinds of implements. And they were mourning the death of the son of the Prophet Muhammad. It is horrendous. And
it's the holiday Ashura.
Yeah. And I remember watching it, and at 10, I began to realize that what you sometimes see in the Arab world is not this veneer of civilization that they portray. And I remember all these kids around me watching this with kind of this glee. And you know how youngsters can pull the wings off a fly? And you suddenly realize that kids are horrible little creatures. And the kids were watching it with glee, all these little boys watching it with glee, these kind of bright eyes. And I remember my dad going over to this chap who'd been a friend of him, and he hit him. First time I saw my dad actually hit somebody. And my dad didn't get angry that often, but he stood there and he was talking to him and he suddenly hit him, and this man shot back, and I saw him put his handkerchief and there's blood going everywhere. And he just kind of, my dad rarely got angry, as I said, and he just looked at me, snapped his fingers, and everybody kind of lined up behind him. And we never saw him again. I don't know what my dad did.
Well, I will make a counter, because as a Puerto Rican, I find myself caught between multiple attitudes. You say the horrors of the veneer civilization. I think that applies to a lot of places. Just look at social media.
Definitely.
The moment you think your team is winning and doing something, you see people like, yeah, kill them and all that. The reason I think that for that person is important because it showed their devotion to their religion and their belief, and for them and to us as a horror because we don't want to see it. But then I part of my family's Spanish, and they still do that in Catholic places where they self-flagellate and all that. So it's like I would be equally horrified if a Catholic were like, "Yes, I love Jesus," and and splitting their back open. And
my dad tells me stories growing up in Iran. This is before the revolution. So still in the Shah's time, a very secular country at that time, but they had a large, and this is even in Tehran. My dad would say that he would go out into the square on Ashura, and you would walk through and you'd see the people going to the square beating themselves,
In Puerto Rico, you still have people who will in Easter will crucify themselves.
Also, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like this was something designed by this Assyrians, going way back, and the Romans copy it because of how horrible it was, a death sentence for traitors and particularly slaves that would betray the empire by rebelling, right? And yet these people are so devoted to their beliefs or want to show their devotion that they crucify themselves. Maybe they have the safety net that somebody will hopefully cut them down eventually, and not let them 3 days later
and stop debating.
Eventually. Yeah.
Hey, what happened to Jimmy? Oh my God, we left him up there.
Last thing I'm gonna say before
like a dark side of leaving the oven on.
Right.
Last thing I'm gonna
Has anybody seen him lately? Sorry, Nick. Go ahead.
Last thing I'm gonna say before the stream ends or whatever.
Yeah.
One of the most surreal moments of the last month or so, one of the unintentionally funniest moments, was Mitt Romney just admitting on camera, "Oh yeah, we want to ban TikTok because kids said free Palestine and boycott McDonald's."
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, all right. Thanks for just coming out and saying it.
About that.
Yeah.
The real reason they want to ban TikTok, it's on YouTube. Check it out.
But okay, so I'm going to end the show, but first, Shazy, Geek, and Isaiah have had their hands up for about 6 hours. So before we end the show, I want to go to each of them and get what they had. So Shazy, you first. Go ahead. Thank you for waiting patiently. Go for it.
It's all good. It's all good. Thanks. So I'm actually a member of a tenant union for low and middle housing income people.
Nice.
And my question was going to be how you guys would afford like the housing affordability issues in your cities or your municipalities. Now I understand that that's a big subject and could take a whole other stream, but we could save it for next time.
Yeah, probably, because that to me, if you start rebuilding spaces, trying to funnel people, into affordable housing, but also have things that they can shop nearby so they can walk and they don't have to get a car. Green spaces for children to be able to both have fun and be educated,
right,
and not get hit by a car.
It starts with
the tax on unused property.
Yeah, the tough thing about it is the actual, speaking in just general terms, the solution is fairly simple, but in order to implement the solution, you need to commit to treating it as more than just a minor problem that needs to be kind of pushed to the side. Right. You can't fix it by just saying, "Oh, let's just do this over here and that'll take care of it." We'll build some affordable housing over here as a part of it. It needs to be a comprehensive solution.
You're gonna get blowback for every little thing, so you have to stay committed. That's true.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you need. There are people at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level, all need to be committed to. Hey, we're going to fix this. We're going to provide livable spaces. We're going to provide affordable housing. We're going to do like a housing first mentality, and we're going to make the necessary changes and reforms to eliminate this problem. And it's going to cost whatever it costs, and it's going to take however long it takes, and we're going to stick with it. And that's easier said than done, especially when everybody wants to pretend that the problems don't exist and just we'll vote for this ballot initiative and that'll take care of it. And that's not the way it's going to work.
Well, here's one thing that I would say. I would point to what Detroit did. So the last time, GM had big layoffs and the others had big layoffs, and so whole sections of the town were dying, where there's like a neighborhood with like 2 or 3 occupied buildings, and then the rest is empty. And so the mayor and the city council, they had some guts, and what they did was they said, look, we're going to basically eminent domain pretty much all the unused empty property. And what they did was, okay, we're not going to have this neighborhood with two occupied buildings. It's too costly to run services there. So you pick up your shit, And these more occupied neighborhoods, pick a dwelling, it's yours. We're giving it to you for free. And then what they did was, with the space they couldn't fill, they bulldozed it. And some people call it community gardens. These are community farms. These are not just a little garden. This is like the space that would occupy 3 or 4 or 5 houses or apartment blocks, and they've turned them into community farms where the members of the community actually work. So it's actually like a little commune almost. And as a result, now the people have fresh food that's local, very sustainable, and very cheap. Everybody's pitching in, so there's that communal effort. So everyone has buy-in, everyone has skin in the game. And then they were able to shut down, and they shut down all the unused neighborhoods, and they were able to concentrate the services, so water, garbage, and all that. So, and that cut their budget by a lot, and then they focused that onto revitalizing the town as opposed to trying to prop up dying neighborhoods. And so
God, yeah, because that's what Otto is doing right now. They're forcing public servants to go back to the office downtown in a vain attempt to revitalize the downtown core. But instead of actually making downtown a greener, more pleasant place for people actually living there, as it is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, you have to. Sorry,
no, go ahead.
The biggest enemy is the suburbs and the exurbs, right? This massive social experiment has failed, and that's why you have the pushback against the 15 minute cities.
The NIMBYs,
yeah, because the idea, especially in North America and specifically the United States, you have 2, maybe 3 generations who have grown up in the suburbs. That's their identity. Right.
Yeah.
And telling people that the place that you think it's idyllic is in fact parasitic at a legal, economic, and social sense, that they are the parasites that libertarians keep complaining about. They're like, oh no, you can tell me that. It's like, I wish I lived in a place where I could just, I have a Walmart here, but if I try to walk, I'll be run over by the students going to the local college, right? Because they have to go in a car, right? So they're going for class, and I'm splattered on the sideway, right? So I could be able to walk all the way to Walmart and buy all my things, or go to Birking, whatever, because they're distance-wise they're there. But the way things are designed. So by the way, Not Just Bikes is a good channel for you to check out. Check all of them out. Good solutions and good explanations, far better than I can give. But it's too dangerous, so I have to get in my car for 5 minutes, burn all that fuel to get cheap food that is very bad for me, and get back to my house. So
it sounds a lot like where I live, because I live in a fairly old-fashioned traditional suburban area. And there are, pretty much everything I would need in order to have like what I need to survive is within a decent walk, but it's far more dangerous to walk than it is to drive. So I end up driving. Exactly. Like if I could walk, if the weather was, if I could walk in nice enough weather, I probably would. More often than not. But it's like, where am I supposed to walk? In people's yards, in the middle of the fucking road? Like there's nowhere to walk.
I live in a very walkable city of Philadelphia, and I live in, just north of the city center, and it's still very, very urban here. I have corner markets. I have a produce market down the street that I can go to and get that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, my life would still be a lot more difficult if I didn't have a car to be able to go to a supermarket where I could pick up, dry goods, because there isn't a place that's there
was a joke in the new episode of in the most recent episode of The Simpsons where Homer temporarily moves to a suburb of Springfield called Little Europe, and it's just like this stereotypical like continental European town, and Bart and Lisa come and find him. And he's dressed like a stereotypical like French person, and is like walking in the cobblestone streets, and they say, "Dad, what are you doing?" And he says, "Right now, I'm going to 5 different shops to get the ingredients for a sandwich."
Right.
And it's like what you were saying. It's like what CMAC is saying. It's like, sometimes it's easier just to go. That's why supermarkets exist. I just want to go to one place so I can get everything I need.
But you can still have supermarkets.
Of course.
The thing is too, dry goods supermarkets. There's nowhere else to get them.
Like I live in New Jersey, and basically most of New Jersey is a suburb, because most of New Jersey was rural, and then
New York and Philadelphia.
Basically, suburbs popped up along the highways. So you'd actually have to
Yeah.
rejigger the whole place. But I mean, I've got 3 supermarkets within a mile drive, so the amount of fuel that I consume is really rather minimal. So what I've done instead is I've got solar power, right? So I'm actually a net producer of power. So now I don't have an electric vehicle yet, but we've been contemplating it. But so if I actually get a solar vehicle, my carbon footprint's going to go down dramatically. And plus, like I said, I don't drive that far. My office is within, a mile and a half of my house, and I work from home like probably I have my company on hybrid, so everybody works from home like 3 days a week and works in the office 2 days a week. Because we just find that when we were completely remote, we did not coordinate as well. Just certain things just work better in person. But so there are things that people can do even in a suburban setting. The big thing is how is there any planning to how your town is laid out, or is it just kind of random scattershot?
Well, yeah, I live in a small, so the closest would be a village, and our infrastructure is quite good in that we actually have buses that go to supermarkets.
That's also part of it.
You actually have decent public transit.
Public transportation is important.
Yeah, all my husband has to do is get to a bus stop, and the bus will take him to the bus station, and then he gets on. I mean, it's 2 buses, but it's 2 buses, and he just has to get from one to the other, and the second one is a freebie, so he just has to get a token clipped, and get off at the supermarket, get it clipped on the way back, and then pay the way back. The major problem is me with my wheelchair. They're not always as accommodating as they say they're going to be. So, which is the reason we don't have a car at the moment, because my husband simply can't afford to run it. He could get the petrol, but he couldn't get the insurance. So we're quite
I'm kind of shocked. I've been kind of shocked, given how much more progressive most of Europe is than the United States, that Europe does not do a good job with the disabled, being disabled access.
Is it the old architecture and old?
I've gone to my nearest town, and I've stopped at shops that have steps, and I've said, you really do need to allow me access. It's in the law. It's been the law for 20 plus years. Oh no, we don't. And I brought up the documents, on my Kindle that I've downloaded from the site, and they're going, "Oh, you've downloaded them from somewhere?" Of course, I've bloody downloaded them from somewhere. Where do you think I've written them?
Where else would you get them?
No, I wrote them myself.
It's like, what if someone in this country? What if like someone in the United States showed like a cop like a law that said the cop's not allowed to do something the cop was doing, and the cop just said, "Oh, you just downloaded that from some website." So
you failed to do.
The only time I ever got really annoyed with one of your countrymen, Steve, was there was a woman had been assaulted in a toilet, and they were stopping men who were wearing these yellow puff jackets, and unfortunately my friend had this big yellow puff jacket that looked similar to the man who had assaulted her, so they were stopping him. They didn't assault him. They didn't handcuff him. They didn't beat him to the ground. They didn't taser him. They just asked him to stay sitting on the wall. Yeah.
So he was going to be fine.
They just asked him to sit there and wait while they sorted everything out, because they wanted to take the woman away. Oh my God! For 40 minutes, he complained vociferously that they had no right to hold him, that he had the right to go free, that he was an American citizen. And eventually this poor woman who'd been there just to kind of keep him away from this woman, they had to have 6 officers around him to keep him where they wanted him, to stop him causing a fracas. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, the male officer who came said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "I don't suppose I can leave now, can I? Because I don't want to be here." And he said, "You friend of yours?" I said, "Well, I'm seriously beginning to wonder, actually."
That's one of those
imperialism right there.
But there's like, it's also, I think it's a side effect of how fucked policing in this country is, because it has, for people who are aware of the problems with the way we police, they sort of automatically go to, the worst case scenario anytime a cop does anything. And you can't really blame them because cops do really fucked up shit all the time. It's not like they've come to that place dishonestly. It's like it's not an unreasonable conclusion to jump to. Yeah, but even if we completely reformed policing and we managed to actually solve or at least largely address a lot of the problems, like there are always going to be times when a cop is going to have to inconvenience a private citizen, you know, in the pursuit of some legitimate goal. You know, like if you just so happen to look like a suspect, you know, there are going to be times where that sort of thing is going to have to happen, and it's not going to make your day, you know, but hopefully if it takes place within a reformed, just or more just system,
they were perfectly
you know,
polite and
sensible,
and they just asked him to sit on the wall.
But the problem is there are so many cases where the cops, you know, and especially if they're dealing with, if the person that they're treating as a suspect is a person of color, but even if it's a white person, there are so many cases of cops mistreating people, jumping to the wrong conclusion, you know, saying like, oh, you look like the person who was seen leaving the scene and you were there at the right time and you don't have an alibi, you must have done it.
Yeah.
You know, and it turns out that's not the right person. Like there are so many cases of that if you find yourself stopped by the cops for what may be a completely reasonable reason, you automatically go to, no, fuck you, I don't have to cooperate, you can't do this to me, I have rights, because you're just protecting yourself.
That's right.
Because
during COVID, I started watching police interaction videos, and I've easily now in the 4 years since seen over 2,000 videos because I was watching at one point several a day. And yeah, I mean, it's so common here. It's so incredibly egregiously common here that there's amazing number of police that don't even know the law or even care. And when they're challenged, you know, they'll lie, or in some cases you can tell that they don't actually know. And then a sub supervisor comes and tells them, no, actually that's not, you can't do that. And then they're surprised and then they've been on the force 15, 20 years and they're clueless because it takes more schooling and certification in this country to be a beautician than it is to be an officer with a gun and a badge.
Or being a massage therapist as well.
That too.
Yeah.
I hate to be the person, but I think we said we're going to end like.
Yes,
like
we. So I know we kind of got off on a tangent. So okay, Geek and Isaiah, everybody is responsible. Equally.
Hey, shut up.
Okay, Geek, your hand is up. You go, and then Isaiah will get you, and then that's it. So
I guess it's like, why bother doing this hands up thing that no one's paying attention to it?
It goes on. It just goes where it goes, and I'm like, oh yeah, people's hands are up. All right.
To be fair, the conversations prior to my question were really fascinating. So
yeah, I mean,
there you go.
Very fascinating. I had several like different like points I wanted to talk about, like the urbanization, like or sidewalks or walking, and like conservatives and how they don't like clean air. Yet Richard Nixon signed created the EPA, something like that. But no, let's forget all that. Later, I'll try to remember them to bring it up. I have a Google Doc of the possible topics that I used to share that I don't anymore because like no one pays attention to them, or
because it never works.
It never works, and the conversation goes through. It'll just be mine for reference. So I was originally going to like mention a question that Mary Carey said in the live chat as well. So I've been paying attention to the live chat, but like it's about discovery, and it's like no, I'm going to just use my floor to just mention. John Roberts asked me this morning if she can like get some money for like food. And this thing, she's probably going to ask me every day for like money for food because like she has no income until like not the first of the month. Well, maybe the first of the month as well, but no, probably the third of the month because the first of the month is on Saturday and is always on the first business day of the month. So there's that. I'll post the links into the live chat as well. And Phoenix has a coffee goal right now, only 44% complete of like $8,000 because like they still do not have their temporary disability assistance program. They've been off that program for like 7 months now because like the caseworker that's been assigned to their like situation really doesn't give a fine fuck about like them whatsoever. That's the system mess word too, because again, means testing have to prove how you're disabled. I already talked about like how I had to like show screenshots of the statements that like I gave this person money. Well, and I'll share the links and like that's it. I will now hand the floor down to Isaiah.
Okay,
I'm
Isaiah,
done.
go for it.
Almost done with my helmet.
Oh yes, show that off. Go ahead, speak, Isaiah.
Cool. That is so good.
This is the best reproduction of the early '80s astronaut helmets they had.
Oh, that's neat.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
Nice.
Yeah, so I took
I
it over.
like that a lot.
I took it,
That's awesome.
and it also like opens. I made it. I can open it.
Very slick.
Nice.
I dig that.
Yeah.
So
Do you wear it? Do you wear it when you want to get into your writing mode? Like think about your idea, your good ideas.
That's
your-
cool.
So I
Yeah.
made it all from scratch. Much
That's
of it.
amazing. The detail, even the little microphones on the inside. That's fantastic.
It's
Yeah,
really cool. Yeah.
I used old this detergent caps for the microphones. So
It looks so good. That's
right.
really cool.
Immaculate.
Oh,
Yeah,
Bravo.
so
absolutely.
Well done. Bravo.
That's
Makes it
awesome.
sound like we don't have rituals for when we write. I mean, me, I hold the cat up in front of the computer screen, recorder, and pray to Bast. But hey, we all...
Like this cat, like a cat like this.
Now look at the kitty.
Look at the
Oh,
kitty.
look at the kitty.
Gotta
Yeah,
love
little
it.
Okay.
kids are-
So yeah,
Serious
so-
mind, you had one last point, and then we're
Yeah.
out of here.
So one thing I'll remind people, it's still several months, election is still several months off, but I saw a really good video from Bo of Fifth Column
Below fifth column, yeah.
and made an excellent point, a point that I've been trying to make to people for a very long time, but I think he did it better. But basically his point was, and Kara, this may be different for you because being in the UK, being in the parliamentary system, that may, the situation may be completely different. But so one thing that they have is they have the idea of spoiling your ballot, right? Yeah, as a way to protest, and all that. We don't have such a thing here. So I know a lot of people, they're not happy with how things are going, and I totally get it, understand, and I'm with you on the matter, subject matter. But the fact of the
Harm
matter
reduction.
is that a protest vote does not hurt the people you're protesting against. It hurts the people that are going to be hurt by when the greater of two evils gets in office and does their thing. There is no functional way to have a protest vote that doesn't hurt the people that you actually care about more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's true.
I understand that. We had that at university. We used to say to people, look, don't put in an abstain vote. Don't not vote because you would just be disregarded. And the only votes that will be counted are the ones for and against. And if you don't vote, if you support us but don't vote, you're basically supporting the other
Right.
side.
And
Yeah,
then just
like
as
I do.
another little follow on, now, as somebody who does vote regularly, and I vote, because it's not possible to vote for any Republican worth anything in New Jersey for a variety of reasons. And again, I don't want the Republicans to get control of anything.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of stuck, even if their Democrats are not, I'm not so hot, I'm kind of stuck with that, which I'm not happy about it, but it happens to be mathematics. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah. But see, the thing is, because I'm a regular voter, the Democratic Party calls me up. I get phone calls. So they actually give a shit about what I think. They actually call me up and they're like, can we count on you? How do you think? And I do give them a piece of my mind when I speak to them. But they actually do pay attention to people who vote regularly. If you don't
a
vote
robocall?
regularly, it's kind of like I stopped going to Chick-fil-A long before I knew that they were homophobic pieces of shit. So I could boycott all I want, but it doesn't mean anything because I wasn't participating. I wasn't their customer, so I couldn't take anything away from them. You only matter if you participate.
Yeah,
And if
we're
you don't participate,
we're
you
getting our
yourself
vote
irrelevant.
we're getting our vote on your Independence Day.
But that,
That's right. Yeah, the general
Yes,
election is on
general-
July 4th. Yeah.
Yeah, July
that's
4th
fun.
on general election
And,
for the
and
UK.
he's
You guys
trying to
want it
gain
back?
votes. He's going to bring conscription back, he says.
Mm.
National service.
That sounds
Sunak.
like that's going to be popular. I know we love it
Oh, yeah.
here.
Sarah,
Everybody
I
loves
don't know.
registering for selective service here in the United States.
Yeah, a comprehensive education to make up for their comprehensive education.
hey,
And let's
Kara,
face it, since half of them don't know which countries border England, or the fact that
Hey,
or
Kira, do
the
you
fact
guys
that
want
our
us
police
back?
don't carry guns, I think maybe national service might do them a bit of good.
I just laugh anytime I hear a Tory say we cannot repeat the mistakes of the past. I'm like, motherfucker, you are the mistakes of the past.
You've been in charge for how long?
That is your
Yeah.
policy.
Yeah.
Repeating the mistakes of the past.
You
After
don't.
14
All
years.
you want to do is repeat the mistakes of
Yeah,
the past.
it's a very
We'd
Orwellian.
be better off having the number 10 cat as a stand-in for the Prime Minister at the moment.
Yes.
And the cabinet underneath him sort of trying to work to some kind of, I don't know, rapprochement or something, because no Prime Minister. We just look at them and go, oh God, who's going to be in for the next poison?
Just
That's
just automatically extend what's happening in the government now, and it will do less damage
Yeah.
than conservatives.
Yeah, it's harm reduction at this point. That's how I view voting.
Yeah.
Kira, do you guys want us back? You guys want us back, Kira?
What, sorry?
Do you want the USA back? Do you want the USA back?
Let's reestablish the British Empire, and
You want Canada?
I don't know. I've just edited a really horrible book where the UK has actually extended its borders into the USA, outed Biden, murdered Trump, forcing.
Oh, well, that sounded all right.
What's the bad part?
Do we all go back to Great Britain in this scenario, or do we go with the people that originally colonized our area?
Yeah, the 13 colonies go back, and the rest.
You all become in this book set in the far future. You all come back to the United Kingdom as one of its colonies. And it's not that the premise is dire. I mean, you just set it in the year 2600. It's that the whole kind of, he hasn't worked out the politics or why some people might rebel against it, or think of the resistance in the First and Second World War, and when there was the
We should end the show. We should end the show. I don't want to interrupt and say shut up, people.
I'm willing to go back if we can overthrow the monarchy.
Should we end the show?
Again.
Let's over.
Well, it is a constitutional monarchy. They have very little say in anything.
Let's
overthrow. It was hard work editing his books because.
Let's overthrow the monarchy. Let's overthrow the monarchy after we end the show.
Yes.
which is going to be right now. Thank you everybody for watching. Okay. Thanks everybody for being a patron or a member. I appreciate all of you. It's been an awesome hang.
I know.
We'll do this, Steve. We'll do this. We'll do this again in a month. Happy Memorial Day. Please stop talking when I'm trying to end the goddamn show.
June 30th. June 30th is the next one.
Have a good Memorial Day to Memorial Day weekend to everybody who celebrates, and we'll see you for this again next month. Thank you everybody for being with me. Thank you everybody for watching, and that's it. Bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.